Amina had always felt out of place in her own home. From a young age, she had been bigger than the other children, and even as she grew into a young woman, her size remained the subject of whispers and laughter. Every glance seemed to carry judgment, every comment a reminder that she did not fit the image her family wanted her to be. Her father often scolded her, calling her lazy and irresponsible, while neighbors rarely hid their disapproval. Despite the discomfort, Amina tried to live quietly, keeping herself away from gossiping eyes and judging voices. Yet no matter what she did, the criticism never stopped. Her life changed abruptly one morning when her father announced that she was to be married. Not just married, but given away as a form of punishment. Amina could hardly believe her ears. Punishment? She had not committed a crime, at least not in the eyes of anyone other than her father. She felt anger burn inside her chest. How could her life be treated like a tool for her father's satisfaction? She wanted to speak, to argue, to demand fairness, but her words seemed small, powerless, easily dismissed. Her father's decision was final, and the man she was to marry was a farmer from the outskirts of the village, known to be poor and humble, living a life that was nothing like the comfort she had known at home. The preparations for her marriage were done swiftly. The villagers gathered to see the unusual union, their eyes wide with curiosity and sometimes pity. Amina walked through the crowd with her head lowered, feeling the weight of every stare. Whispers followed her wherever she went. "It is a punishment," they said. "Poor girl. So unfortunate." The humiliation felt heavier than the thick dress she wore, heavier than the chains of her own self-doubt. Her mind raced with thoughts of what awaited her, imagining cold nights, hard labor, and the endless quiet of a life so different from her own. When Amina arrived at the farm, she was struck by the simplicity of the place. The house was small and plain, built with sturdy wood and stone without any luxurious decoration. The surrounding land stretched outward, green fields lined with crops swaying gently in the wind, a few scattered animals grazing quietly. At first it seemed empty and desolate to her, and she felt a pang of fear and regret. She wanted to turn back, to escape to the life she had known. But there was nowhere to go. The choice had already been made for her, and she had to live with it. Rashid, the farmer she was to marry, met her with a calm expression. He was not tall or imposing, but there was a quiet strength in the way he carried himself. His eyes held a depth that made her uneasy, as if he could see straight through her. He said little, simply offering a nod and a small smile. Amina noticed that he did not treat her with mockery or pity, which was different from what she had expected. The first night was tense. Words were scarce, replaced by awkward glances and silent movements. Amina lay awake, feeling the weight of the day press down on her. She wondered how her life had come to this, a life where she was treated as if she were being punished for her very existence. Days on the farm began with the rising sun. Amina watched Rashid move about the fields, tending to crops and animals with careful precision. She was unaccustomed to the labor required on a farm, and even simple chores exhausted her. Yet Rashid never demanded more than she could give, never scolded her for her lack of experience. There was patience in his demeanor that she found strange and almost comforting. Gradually, she began to notice details in the farm that she had overlooked initially. The neat rows of vegetables, the gentle care of the livestock, the quiet rhythm of the day that contrasted sharply with the chaos of her previous life. The villagers continued to gossip, though their tone shifted slightly when they noticed Rashid's quiet competence. "He works hard," they said. "But still, poor girl, she has been given a hard life." Amina heard these words and felt a mixture of shame and defiance. She did not want to be defined by what others thought of her. Deep down, she knew she had to find a way to survive this new life, not just endure it. There was a stubborn spark inside her that refused to be extinguished. A spark that whispered she could rise above humiliation and find strength in unexpected places. As the days passed, Amina began to adjust in small ways. She learned the rhythms of farm life, how to carry water without spilling, how to feed the animals without startling them, how to move through the fields without causing damage. Rashid guided her with quiet instruction, never condescending, always patient. Slowly, she began to feel a sense of competence, a sense that she could contribute, that she could be more than the sum of the cruel words she had grown up hearing. One evening, after the work was done, Rashid sat beside her on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the hills. He spoke softly, asking about her life in the village, about her family and her experiences. Amina hesitated at first, unsure if she could trust him with her thoughts and fears. But there was something genuine in his manner, something that made her feel safe enough to speak. She told him about the ridicule, about the shame, about the loneliness she had always felt. He listened, never interrupting, never judging, and when she finished, he simply nodded. He said nothing that could embarrass her, nothing that could deepen her shame. His silence, filled with understanding, felt like a balm to her wounded pride. Amina's nights on the farm grew calmer, even peaceful. She began to sleep without the tight knot of anxiety in her chest. She noticed the beauty around her, the way the sunlight touched the leaves in the morning, the quiet songs of birds, the distant mountains standing tall and steady. These small wonders, once ignored or unnoticed, now brought her moments of joy she had never allowed herself to feel before. Slowly, the anger she carried toward her father and the world began to soften, replaced by a tentative curiosity about this new life and the man who had welcomed her into it without cruelty. Despite the initial shame and fear, Amina began to see that life on the farm was not the punishment she had expected. Rashid's patience and the simple beauty of the land offered a strange sense of freedom. She was learning that strength could come in many forms, and that kindness, even quiet kindness, could be more powerful than harsh words or luxury. Her days, though filled with hard work, were no longer just a sentence to endure. They were a chance to discover herself, to learn her own limits, and to begin to imagine a future beyond humiliation. The villagers continued to whisper, but Amina began to notice that she no longer felt the need to hear their judgments. Their words had lost some of their sting. She had begun to see herself differently, not as the girl punished for being herself, but as someone learning to navigate the challenges life had given her. And though she did not yet know what the future held, she felt for the first time in a long while a spark of hope that perhaps life could be more than the shame and ridicule she had known. Each day brought small victories. Learning to carry heavy baskets without stumbling, helping feed the animals, noticing the changes in crops as they grew, understanding the rhythm of seasons. Amina began to feel a sense of pride in her work, pride that was hers and hers alone, untainted by anyone else's judgment. And while she still struggled with her self-image and the memories of ridicule, she found that the quiet strength of the farm and the steady presence of Rashid offered her something she had never experienced before: the possibility of respect, of dignity, and even perhaps of belonging. Life on the farm settled into a steady rhythm, and Amina began to understand its patterns more clearly. She woke each morning with the sun, the golden light spilling over the green fields and casting long shadows of trees onto the earth. She quickly learned that the farm was a living, breathing place that required attention at all hours. Every crop, every animal depended on constant care and watchfulness. It was exhausting work, yet there was a certain satisfaction in it that she had never felt in her previous life. The farm was honest, demanding, and rewarding in ways the village had never offered. Rashid continued to guide her with patience, teaching her how to milk the cows, how to collect eggs without startling the chickens, how to feed the goats properly. At first, Amina's hands ached, and her muscles protested movements they had not performed before. She would often stumble and grow frustrated, feeling as though she would never adjust to this life. Yet Rashid never criticized her, never expressed disappointment. Instead, he simply demonstrated again, slowly and methodically, showing her that failure was not shameful, only a step toward learning. She began to notice small details about the farm that she had missed at first: the way the soil smelled after a fresh rain, the patterns of birds in the sky, the quiet, satisfying rhythm of a cow chewing its cud. These details slowly became comforting, grounding her in the present and giving her a sense of connection to the world around her. For the first time in years, Amina felt a sense of purpose beyond what others expected of her. At mealtime, they shared simple food, fresh vegetables from the garden, eggs, and occasionally bread baked from their own grain. Amina noticed that Rashid ate modestly, yet there was an attention to quality and care in everything he did. He would talk about the importance of balance, of listening to the land and the animals, and she found herself listening intently. There was, wisdom in his words, practical and grounded, and she began to appreciate his perspective on life. It was different from the judgment and criticism she had known in her family, and it gave her hope that people could be kind and strong at the same time. Days turned into weeks, and Amina began to participate more actively in the farm's daily tasks. She learned to plant seeds in neat rows, water them just enough, and protect them from pests. She learned to tend the animals with patience and understanding, recognizing their needs without forcing her own will upon them. Each day brought small successes, small moments of pride. For the first time, she felt that her actions mattered, that her efforts could create something tangible and good. The villagers still whispered, "Of course." They noticed the change in Amina, how she moved more confidently, how she no longer seemed frightened of their opinions. Some of the gossip was cruel, but some was admiring. They could not ignore that she was learning and growing, and that she was managing to survive a life many would have thought unbearable. Amina tried to ignore the judgment, focusing instead on the work at hand and the quiet strength of the man she was married to. One day a visiting trader arrived, a man who had known Rashid for years. He greeted Rashid warmly, and Amina noticed a surprising familiarity and respect in their interaction. Curious, she asked Rashid about it later. Rashid explained that he managed far more land than most people realized, that he owned acres of fertile farmland outside the village. Yet he chose to live modestly, away from the trappings of wealth. His focus was on work, on respect, and on the life he could create with honesty and effort. Amina was stunned. The man she had believed to be poor and humble was, in fact, wealthy and influential. This revelation shifted something inside Amina. She felt a wave of guilt for having judged him, for assuming his life was simple or unworthy. At the same time, she began to understand that Rashid valued things she had never known: integrity, hard work, and respect. His humility was not weakness, as she had assumed, but strength. She realized that she had been living under the illusion that appearances defined people, and that her own self-worth had been tied too closely to the opinions of others. As the days continued, Amina began to notice more about herself. She found strength in her body that she had not known existed, carrying water, lifting baskets, walking through fields under the hot sun. It was hard work, but each day she became stronger. Her mind, too, was sharpening. She began to understand the cycles of planting and harvesting, the decisions Rashid made in caring for the animals, the importance of timing and patience. The farm was teaching her, not just about labor, but about life itself. At night, she would sit beside Rashid, listening as he spoke softly about his plans for the farm, his vision for the future. She asked questions, eager to learn, and he answered with patience, never condescending. Slowly, they began to understand each other, to share thoughts and experiences. Amina felt a sense of connection she had never felt before, a quiet understanding that went beyond words. It was in the way he watched her learn, the way he guided without pressure, the way he respected her presence on the farm. Despite her growing respect for Rashid, Amina's journey was not without struggle. There were days when her body ached so badly that she could barely move. Days when frustration and self-doubt crept in like shadows. She would remember her life at home, the harsh words of her father, and wonder if she could ever truly belong here. But each time she would find a moment of resilience, a small success that reminded her that she was capable. The first time she managed to milk a cow without assistance, the first time she harvested a basket of vegetables perfectly, the first time an animal responded to her care, each small victory fueled her confidence. Amina also began to form small connections with the village women, learning their ways and sharing experiences. Some were kind and patient, teaching her tricks and shortcuts for farm work. Others remained distant, their gossip quiet but persistent. She learned to navigate these relationships carefully, choosing to absorb the helpful lessons and ignore the idle chatter. Slowly, she began to feel a sense of belonging, not because she had sought approval, but because she had earned respect through her own effort and determination. The quiet moments in the evenings became a source of reflection. Amina would sit outside, watching the sun sink behind the hills, listening to the sounds of the farm settle into night. She thought about her past, about the harsh judgments and the humiliation she had endured, and she felt a sense of clarity she had never known. She realized that her self-worth had never come from anyone else's opinion, but from her own ability to face life, to learn, to grow, and to endure. As the weeks passed, the farm became more than a place of work. It became a sanctuary, a space where Amina could rediscover herself, learn resilience, and begin to dream of a future not defined by punishment, but by possibility. She began to understand that Rashid's quiet presence was more than guidance. It was a model of strength, patience, and integrity, and in observing him, she began to see the potential within herself, the possibility of becoming someone capable, respected, and whole. Amina's journey was far from over, and she knew there would be more challenges ahead. But she had begun to understand that the hardships she faced were shaping her into a stronger person. The farm, the work, the quiet wisdom of Rashid, all of it was teaching her lessons no words could fully express. And with each passing day, she felt a little more prepared to face whatever life had in store, a little more ready to discover who she truly was beyond the judgments of others. Life on the farm continued with its steady rhythm, but something unexpected was about to happen. One afternoon, a man arrived at the farm, dressed in clothes that marked him as wealthy, his manner confident and familiar. He greeted Rashid warmly, speaking as though they were longtime friends. Amina, curious, watched from a distance, her mind buzzing with questions. She had assumed Rashid's life was modest, even simple, and yet this man treated him with the respect one would reserve for someone of high status. The realization unsettled her. Later that evening, Amina asked Rashid quietly about the man. Rashid looked at her calmly and explained that he owned vast tracts of fertile land beyond the village. Most people in the village did not know because he chose to live simply, to work the land with his own hands rather than hide behind wealth. Amina was stunned. The man she had been forced to marry, the poor farmer she had thought would live a life of hardship, was actually wealthy and influential. Her mind struggled to reconcile the image she had created of Rashid with the reality of the man in front of her. Amina felt a mixture of emotions: shock, guilt, and awe. She realized how wrong she had been to judge him by appearances, and how much she had underestimated him. Her assumptions had been based on superficial observations, not understanding. And she felt ashamed of the thoughts she had harbored. Rashid, sensing her inner turmoil, spoke gently about the value of humility and integrity, explaining that wealth was not what made a person respected. His calm demeanor and the quiet strength of his words had a profound impact on her. The next days were filled with a new sense of awareness for Amina. She observed Rashid not just as a husband, but as a man who had built his life on principles and hard work. She saw how he planned his crops, managed his land, and made decisions that balanced sustainability with productivity. She realized that what she had assumed was simplicity was actually a careful, intelligent approach to life. Rashid's life was rich in ways she had never imagined, and she began to understand that true wealth was not always visible. Amina's perception of the villagers' gossip began to shift as well. They had always judged her harshly, but now she saw their assumptions mirrored her own. Just as she had misjudged Rashid, they had misjudged her. This realization was humbling, and it sparked a quiet determination within her to let go of the weight of others' opinions. She understood that life was not about appearances or judgments, but about the character and actions of individuals. With this new understanding, Amina began to engage more deeply with farm life. She applied herself to learning about the land, the crops, and the animals. She started taking initiative, observing patterns and making small decisions about watering, feeding, and planting. Rashid noticed her growing confidence and independence and supported her without interference, allowing her to learn through experience. Their relationship began to evolve from one of obligation to one of mutual respect and partnership. One morning, Rashid took Amina to a part of the land she had never seen before. The fields stretched endlessly, rich and green, dotted with orchards and grazing animals. She was amazed at the scale and productivity of the farm. The land was fertile and well managed, a testament to Rashid's intelligence and dedication. He explained how he had inherited some of it, but had worked tirelessly to expand and improve it. Each field had a purpose, each section of the land was planned meticulously. Amina was in awe, realizing that the man she had judged so quickly had built a legacy that many in the village could only dream of. This revelation also changed Amina's view of herself. She had felt trapped in her own limitations, defined by her body and by the harsh judgments of her family. Now she saw that life could be more than she had imagined. She began to dream of contributing meaningfully, of finding her own place in the world not through appearances or status, but through action and effort. The farm became a symbol of possibility, a place where growth and transformation were tangible. As they worked together, Amina noticed the subtle ways Rashid cared for others. He treated the animals with respect, ensured the workers were treated fairly, and maintained a sense of balance in his life. Amina began to see the strength in gentleness, the power in patience, and the importance of consistency. She realized that true influence was not about showing off wealth or power, but about making a difference through actions, no matter how quiet or unnoticed they might seem. One evening, as they rested on the porch overlooking the fields, Amina spoke to Rashid about her fears and her past. She shared how she had felt judged and punished, and how she had assumed his life would be hard because of appearances. Rashid listened attentively, never interrupting, never dismissing her feelings. His response was simple yet profound. He reminded her that life was full of surprises, and that people often misjudged one another because they did not see the full story. His words resonated deeply, giving her a sense of clarity and peace she had not felt in years. In the following weeks, Amina began to notice changes in herself. She was more confident, more willing to take on challenges, and more thoughtful in her actions. She learned to plan and organize, to observe and adapt, and to value the work she did. Each task she completed, each problem she solved, added to her sense of accomplishment and self-worth. The farm was no longer just a place of labor. It had become a classroom, a sanctuary, and a proving ground for her own potential. The villagers, still observing from a distance, began to notice the transformation in Amina as well. The once timid and ashamed girl was becoming capable, self-assured, and respected. Some were surprised, others envious, but all were forced to reconsider their assumptions. Amina, however, no longer sought their approval. She understood that her journey was her own, and that validation came from effort, learning, and growth, not from the opinions of others. Amina also began to understand Rashid on a deeper level. She saw his vision for the farm, his careful planning, and his unwavering commitment to integrity. She realized that wealth and influence were not measured by appearances or possessions, but by responsibility, knowledge, and the impact one had on the lives around them. Rashid's humility and dedication inspired her, and she felt a quiet admiration growing within her, a recognition of the man's true character. One day, a visitor from the city arrived, a man who dealt with agricultural trade. He spoke to Rashid about buying large quantities of produce and praised his management skills. Amina listened, astonished at the respect and recognition Rashid commanded. She realized that the man she had feared and judged had built a life of influence and respect through hard work, intelligence, and patience. The truth was far beyond anything she had imagined, and it humbled her profoundly. This knowledge also began to change how Amina viewed her own life and future. She recognized that she had been given an opportunity not through luck, but through circumstances that allowed her to learn, grow, and contribute. She saw that her own abilities and determination could shape her destiny, and that her past hardships were not limitations but lessons. The farm, with its endless fields and careful management, became a metaphor for the life she could cultivate for herself, grounded in effort, patience, and integrity. Evenings became times of reflection and conversation. Amina and Rashid would discuss the work done, the plans for the future, and the lessons learned each day. Their relationship deepened, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. Amina began to feel a connection she had never experienced before, a sense of belonging and understanding that was not based on appearances or judgment, but on shared effort, respect, and the quiet growth of trust. As part 3 of her journey unfolded, Amina realized that her assumptions had been the greatest barriers to understanding the world and the people around her. She had judged Rashid unfairly, assumed limitations based on appearances, and carried resentment toward her circumstances. Now, with knowledge and perspective, she began to see the potential in life, the opportunities for growth, and the importance of character over status. The farm, the land, and the quiet strength of Rashid became her guide, showing her that transformation was possible, even in the most unexpected places. As the seasons changed, Amina's life on the farm began to transform in ways she had never imagined. What had once felt like punishment gradually became a journey of self-discovery and growth. She woke each morning before the sun, carrying water, tending to the animals, and working in the fields. Each task, though exhausting, gave her a sense of accomplishment. The work shaped her body and mind, instilling strength, patience, and resilience she had never known. Rashid continued to guide her, not with strict commands, but with gentle instruction and encouragement. He allowed her to take initiative, to make mistakes, and to learn from them. Amina began to see the farm as a teacher, offering lessons in responsibility, observation, and decision-making. She discovered the joy in problem-solving, whether it was figuring out how to protect the crops from pests or managing the feeding schedule for the livestock. These small victories built her confidence, and she began to realize that her abilities extended far beyond what she had once believed. Her perspective on life and herself also changed. The ridicule she had endured from her family and villagers no longer held the same power over her. She understood that their judgments were limited, based on shallow views and a lack of understanding. What mattered was her own effort, her own learning, and the integrity with which she approached life. Amina began to embrace her own worth, independent of the harsh words and assumptions she had once allowed to define her. Rashid noticed the transformation as well. He observed her growing competence and confidence, and he treated her with increasing respect, recognizing her contributions to the farm. Their relationship evolved from one of obligation to partnership. They began to share ideas about managing the land, planning harvests, and improving the farm. Amina's input became valuable, and Rashid listened attentively, validating her observations and insights. It was a dynamic built on trust and mutual respect, a sharp contrast to the fear and humiliation she had once felt. With this new understanding, Amina took more responsibility on the farm. She learned about crop rotation, soil management, and irrigation techniques. She discovered ways to increase productivity without exhausting the land. Rashid guided her but allowed her to experiment, teaching her the balance between knowledge and intuition. Each day she became more capable, more self-assured, and more connected to the land and the life she was building. Amina's physical transformation paralleled her inner growth. The labor of the farm strengthened her body, and she began to feel more agile, capable, and energized. But her focus was not on appearance. It was on function, strength, and health. She appreciated her body for what it could do, not how it looked. This shift in perspective gave her a new sense of freedom, allowing her to move through life with confidence and purpose. Beyond her own development, Amina also began to observe the subtle ways Rashid interacted with others. He treated workers with fairness and kindness, respected his neighbors, and maintained a humble, quiet demeanor despite his wealth. These qualities left a profound impression on her. She realized that true strength and respect came not from imposing oneself but from actions grounded in integrity, empathy, and patience. Rashid's example inspired her to reflect on her own behavior and values, encouraging her to grow as a person and as a partner. Their evenings often became a time of reflection and discussion. They would sit on the porch watching the sun set over the fields, talking about the day's work, challenges, and observations. Amina shared her thoughts, insights, and worries, and Rashid listened, offering advice when necessary, but mostly providing space for her to think and learn. These conversations deepened their connection, creating an intimacy rooted in mutual respect, understanding, and shared experience. As Amina became more competent, she also started contributing ideas for improving the farm. She suggested ways to store crops more efficiently, methods to conserve water, and small adjustments to animal care routines. Rashid welcomed these suggestions, valuing her perspective and involving her in decision-making. This partnership not only strengthened the farm's operations, but also solidified Amina's sense of agency and belonging. She realized that she was not just a guest or a passive observer, but an integral part of the farm and its future. The villagers who once whispered about her misfortune began to notice her transformation. The timid, ashamed girl they had known was becoming capable, confident, and respected. Some expressed surprise or admiration, while others tried to maintain their judgmental stance. Amina, however, paid little attention. She had discovered a sense of self-worth independent of their opinions. Her focus was on learning, growing, and contributing, rather than seeking approval from those who had never understood her. Through her growing involvement in the farm, Amina also discovered a sense of purpose and fulfillment. She realized that her life was no longer defined by punishment or shame, but by the actions she took, the skills she developed, and the impact she had on her surroundings. The work was hard, but it was honest and meaningful. Each seed planted, each animal cared for, each problem solved became a testament to her resilience and growth. Amina's relationship with Rashid continued to deepen. She noticed the quiet ways he showed care and respect, preparing meals, ensuring she was comfortable, and recognizing her contributions. Their partnership became a source of strength and inspiration for her. She began to feel affection and admiration for him, not just as a husband but as a mentor, guide, and equal. Their shared experiences created a bond built on trust, respect, and understanding. As the harvest season approached, Amina felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. She had become an essential part of the farm, capable of managing complex tasks and making informed decisions. Her growth was evident not only to Rashid but to herself. She could see the tangible results of her efforts in the healthy crops, well cared for animals, and smoothly operating farm. The land, once overwhelming and unfamiliar, had become a place of mastery and connection. This transformation also affected her view of her past. She no longer felt the same anger or shame toward her family or the villagers. She understood that their judgments were limited by their perspectives, and she chose not to let them define her. Instead, she focused on what she could control: her actions, her growth, and the life she was building. This shift in mindset brought a sense of freedom and empowerment she had never known. Amina also began to notice subtle changes in how she related to others. She became more empathetic, patient, and understanding, recognizing that everyone had struggles and limitations. She applied the lessons she learned from Rashid and the farm to her interactions with workers, neighbors, and visitors. Her approach was grounded in respect, fairness, and thoughtfulness, earning her admiration and trust. She discovered that leadership and influence were not about asserting power, but about guiding, supporting, and inspiring others. Through these experiences, Amina developed a sense of identity and self-worth that was independent of appearance, wealth, or societal judgment. She understood that her value was defined by her actions, her resilience, and her integrity. The farm, the work, and her partnership with Rashid became a foundation for her personal growth, teaching her lessons that extended beyond the land and into life itself. As part 4 of her journey unfolded, Amina recognized that she was no longer the same girl who had arrived at the farm filled with fear, anger, and shame. She had become a capable, confident, and self-aware woman. She had learned the value of hard work, patience, humility, and integrity. She had discovered her own strength, her ability to learn and grow, and the power of mutual respect and partnership. The farm, once a place of punishment, had become a place of transformation, hope, and new beginnings. The seasons turned, and Amina had transformed in ways she had never imagined. She had arrived at the farm feeling humiliated, fearful, and uncertain about her future. Now she was strong, capable, and confident. The farm had become more than a place of labor. It was a place of growth, learning, and discovery. Every day she spent there, she understood more about the land, the animals, and herself. Each sunrise brought opportunities to learn and contribute, and each sunset gave her time to reflect on her progress. Amina's relationship with Rashid had grown into a deep partnership. They worked side by side in the fields, discussed plans for the farm, and shared moments of quiet reflection on the porch in the evenings. Rashid treated her with respect, valuing her opinions and insights, and Amina had learned to trust his guidance while also asserting her own understanding. Their bond was rooted in mutual respect, shared experience, and growing affection. It was a love born not from instant attraction but from understanding, trust, and the recognition of each other's strength. The farm itself had flourished under their combined efforts. Amina had applied herself to improving the irrigation system, caring for the livestock, and planting new crops. Her ideas were practical, thoughtful, and often improved efficiency. Rashid encouraged her creativity, recognizing the value she brought to the farm's management. Together, they had created a productive, thriving environment that benefited both them and the community. The land, once overwhelming to her, had become a place where her skills and effort were visible, tangible, and celebrated. Through her work, Amina had discovered a sense of purpose that extended beyond herself. She began mentoring the younger villagers, teaching them about farming techniques, animal care, and the importance of patience and observation. Her confidence inspired others, and slowly she became a respected figure in the community. The whispers and judgments that had once haunted her were replaced with acknowledgement and, in some cases, admiration. People began to see her not as the girl punished for her size, but as a capable and intelligent woman who had earned her place through effort and integrity. Amina's health and physical strength continued to improve. The labor of the farm had transformed her body, giving her energy, agility, and endurance. She appreciated her body not for appearances, but for its ability to sustain her through demanding work and long days. This new relationship with her own body brought a sense of freedom and self-respect she had never known. She moved through the fields with confidence, knowing her worth was not tied to judgment or external validation. Her personal growth also extended to emotional maturity. Amina had learned to manage frustration, overcome fear, and approach challenges with patience and thoughtfulness. She had discovered resilience within herself, a strength that allowed her to face difficulties without despair. The hardships of her early life, which had once seemed like burdens, became sources of insight and motivation. She understood that past struggles did not define her, but had prepared her for the challenges and opportunities she now embraced. Rashid's influence remained profound, but subtle. He had shown her the importance of humility, respect, and steady effort. He had modeled integrity and patience in ways that words alone could not convey. Amina had absorbed these lessons, applying them in her own life and in her interactions with others. Their partnership had become a balance of guidance and autonomy, where both contributed equally to the farm's success and to each other's growth. As the farm thrived, so did the connection between Amina and Rashid. Their relationship deepened into love, grounded in mutual respect, trust, and understanding. They celebrated successes together, supported each other through challenges, and shared moments of quiet contentment. The affection between them was gentle but strong, built on shared experiences and the recognition of each other's character. Amina no longer saw Rashid as merely her husband or a figure of authority. She saw him as a true partner, someone who valued and understood her. The villagers witnessing Amina's transformation began to alter their perception of her. The same people who had once whispered about her size and judged her harshly now approached her with respect. Some sought her advice on farming and livestock, acknowledging her knowledge and capability. Others admitted their surprise at her growth and resilience, recognizing that she had exceeded the limitations they had imposed upon her. Amina, however, did not seek their approval. She had discovered her own self-worth, rooted in effort, skill, and integrity rather than in the judgment of others. Amina also reflected on her past, particularly the harsh treatment she had endured from her family. She felt a mixture of understanding and forgiveness. While she recognized the mistakes and cruelty in their actions, she no longer carried resentment in the same way. She understood that their judgments were based on ignorance and societal pressures, and she chose to focus on her own life and growth rather than dwell on the past. This shift in perspective brought a sense of peace and liberation, allowing her to fully embrace the life she had created. The farm's success continued to grow under Amina and Rashid's care. They expanded the crop variety, improved storage methods, and enhanced irrigation systems. Each decision was thoughtful, informed by observation, experience, and careful planning. Amina had become adept at balancing multiple responsibilities, managing tasks, and making informed choices. Her confidence and skill were evident to everyone who interacted with the farm, and her contributions were valued and respected. The bond between Amina and Rashid extended beyond work. They shared meals, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. They discussed dreams, hopes, and challenges, supporting each other emotionally and practically. Their love was steady, built on understanding and shared experiences rather than fleeting attraction. It was a love that had grown from patience, mutual respect, and recognition of each other's strengths and character. Amina's journey had also influenced her view of wealth and success. She understood that true wealth was not measured solely by possessions or status, but by the impact one had on the lives around them, the relationships one nurtured, and the integrity with which one lived. Rashid's life had exemplified this truth, and Amina had absorbed these lessons, shaping her own approach to life and work. She found satisfaction in meaningful effort, honest labor, and the knowledge that her actions had tangible, positive effects. As the story of her transformation spread through the village, Amina became a symbol of resilience, growth, and the power of opportunity. She had arrived at the farm as a girl punished for her size, uncertain and ashamed, and she had become a confident, capable, and respected woman. Her journey was a testament to the strength that emerges from perseverance, the value of learning and effort, and the possibility of transformation when one embraces opportunity with courage and humility. In the evenings, Amina often reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the fear and humiliation of her early days, the endless judgment of her family and neighbors, and the doubts she had carried about her own worth. She contrasted those memories with her current reality, a life of purpose, connection, and respect. She realized that every challenge she had faced, every task she had undertaken, and every lesson she had learned had brought her to this moment. The farm, once a place of punishment, had become a place of redemption, growth, and new beginnings. Amina had not only transformed her own life, but had also influenced the lives of those around her. Rashid's partnership had deepened, the farm had thrived, and the community had begun to see the value of resilience, effort, and integrity. Her story became a quiet inspiration, demonstrating that circumstances do not define a person, that judgment can be overcome, and that growth is possible when one embraces opportunity and effort. As part 5 of her journey unfolded, Amina felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had learned to trust herself, to value her abilities, and to embrace the possibilities that life offered. She had discovered love, partnership, and purpose. The farm had become a living symbol of her transformation, a testament to resilience, effort, and integrity. She understood that her journey was ongoing, but she faced the future with confidence, strength, and hope. Her life, once marked by punishment and shame, had become one of empowerment, respect, and meaning, and in that, she found true happiness and a sense of belonging that she had never known before. With the seasons turning again, Amina's life on the farm had reached a level of stability and fulfillment she had never imagined. She had grown stronger, more capable, and confident in herself. The farm had become not only a place of work, but a sanctuary of learning and personal transformation. Every task, whether planting crops, tending to animals, or maintaining the property, brought satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment. She understood the rhythms of the land, the animals, and the seasons, and she felt a deep connection to the life she had built. Amina and Rashid's partnership continued to strengthen. Their relationship was now rooted in shared effort, mutual respect, and understanding. They worked together seamlessly, making decisions about the farm, solving problems, and planning for the future. Rashid valued her judgment, and Amina felt her opinions were meaningful and respected. This partnership gave her confidence and reinforced her sense of belonging. It was a far cry from the fear and uncertainty she had felt when she first arrived on the farm. Her mornings were filled with purpose. She would rise with the sun, walking through the fields as the dew clung to the crops, checking for signs of growth or illness, and planning the day's tasks. The animals awaited her attention, feeding, watering, and care routines that required patience and observation. Amina had become adept at anticipating their needs, understanding their behaviors, and ensuring their well-being. Each day offered challenges and rewards, reinforcing her skill, endurance, and self-reliance. Through her work, Amina also discovered leadership within herself. She began training some of the younger villagers who came to help on the farm, showing them how to plant and harvest, care for animals, and manage water and soil. She taught with patience and encouragement, drawing on the lessons she had learned from Rashid and her own experiences. The villagers began to recognize her expertise, seeking her guidance and respecting her decisions. She realized that her own confidence and skill could inspire and empower others, creating a ripple effect of growth and learning in the community. Amina's transformation extended beyond practical skills. Her emotional resilience had grown immensely. She could face difficult situations with clarity, manage frustration, and approach problems thoughtfully rather than impulsively. She had learned to navigate setbacks with patience, understanding that mistakes were opportunities to learn rather than failures. This emotional growth was a source of inner strength, giving her a sense of stability and confidence she had never experienced in her early life. Rashid remained a guiding presence, but allowed her space to take initiative. He provided advice and shared his knowledge, but encouraged her to make her own choices and learn from the outcomes. This approach fostered Amina's independence and reinforced her self-esteem. She began to understand that true strength was not about dominance or control, but about responsibility, observation, and action guided by integrity. One afternoon, a group of villagers approached the farm to request assistance with planting in their own fields. They had heard of Amina's skills and confidence and wanted her guidance. She eagerly agreed, seeing an opportunity to share what she had learned and to help others improve their lives. She guided them through planting techniques, soil preparation, and crop care, emphasizing patience, observation, and consistent effort. The villagers were impressed with her knowledge and her ability to teach. It was a validation of her growth and her new sense of purpose. During these interactions, Amina also reflected on her past. She had endured judgment, shame, and punishment from her family and community, but those experiences had shaped her resilience and determination. She realized that her journey was not about escaping her past, but about transforming it into strength, knowledge, and compassion. The hardships she had faced had prepared her for a life of meaningful work, partnership, and leadership. She no longer felt anger toward those who had judged her. Instead, she felt gratitude for the lessons that had propelled her growth. As the harvest approached, Amina took pride in the fruits of her labor. She had learned to manage the crops efficiently, care for the animals meticulously, and maintain the land responsibly. The farm thrived under her and Rashid's guidance, producing abundant crops and healthy livestock. Each successful harvest was a testament to her dedication, skill, and partnership with Rashid. She understood that her efforts had a tangible impact, and this realization brought immense satisfaction and fulfillment. Amina's sense of identity had evolved as well. She no longer defined herself by her past weight, her family's judgment, or the village's whispers. She measured her worth by her actions, her growth, and her contributions. Her confidence radiated in the way she moved, spoke, and interacted with others. She had become a woman who could navigate challenges with clarity, lead with compassion, and inspire respect without demanding it. Her relationship with Rashid continued to deepen. They shared quiet moments in the evenings, reflecting on the day's work, planning for future seasons, and discussing their hopes and dreams. Their conversations were filled with mutual understanding, laughter, and shared experiences. Amina had grown to admire Rashid not only for his skill and knowledge, but for his integrity, patience, and humility. She recognized that love in its truest form was built on respect, partnership, and shared growth. Amina also began to notice the broader impact of her transformation on the community. Villagers who had once doubted or judged her now sought her guidance and respected her opinions. Her presence became a source of inspiration, demonstrating that perseverance, effort, and integrity could overcome prejudice and limitation. She understood that her journey could serve as a model for others, particularly young women who faced societal judgment or obstacles in pursuing meaningful work and self-improvement. Through these experiences, Amina learned the value of balance in life. She understood that success was not solely about work or achievement, but also about relationships, emotional resilience, and personal fulfillment. She maintained her connection to the land, nurtured her bond with Rashid, and engaged with the community meaningfully. Each aspect of her life contributed to her sense of purpose and satisfaction, creating a holistic understanding of success and happiness. As part 6 of her journey unfolded, Amina felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had arrived at the farm as a girl burdened with fear, shame, and uncertainty, and she had become a capable, confident, and respected woman. She had learned to value her abilities, trust herself, and embrace challenges with courage. The farm, her partnership with Rashid, and her engagement with the community had provided the tools and experiences necessary for her transformation. She understood that her life was now defined not by punishment or judgment, but by effort, growth, and integrity. In the evenings, Amina often reflected on the contrast between her past and present.